Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parshas Beshalach. This is a fundamental parsha for the Jewish people. At the end of last week's, there was the plague of the firstborn. Bnei Israel exited Mitzrayim, Egypt, and now we are coming to the next phase. Hashem strengthened Pharaoh's heart and that of the Egyptians. They were terrorized. 3 days later, they realized they weren't coming back because he had sent spies. And then their hearts were strengthened, so they decided to pursue Jewish people. Now, what does it mean their hearts were strengthened? It's all along, Pharaoh did not want to let him go. Out of sheer terror of the plague of the firstborn, he did. Once he thought about it, and the rest of his army, they really didn't want to let him go. They thought they were only going for 3 days. When they found out they weren't, it enticed them to chase him. He lined up 600 chariots. He lined up the equivalent of a superpower war machine today of planes and tanks, and he pursued them. Then the sea split into 12 parts at night. And the miracle was some of the waters solidified, the upper waters ran into channels. And from there, the next morning, the Egyptians pursued. They were drowned and their bodies were put in on the land so that the Bnei Israel no longer had to fear them, that the power of Egypt was gone forever. The next incident, less than 3 days later, they're in the desert. Instead of being grateful to Hashem, what do the people do? They complain about the fact they don't have water. And it's called Mara. They're complaining about it. Water is brought. They go to another place. Water is brought. Then they're complaining about they don't like the choice of food. Hashem sends them the heavenly food called man, which we're going to get for the next 40 years until they got into Eretz Israel under Yeshua. Were they still satisfied then? No, some people wanted meat. So Hashem sent all kinds of quail, and anybody who ate it was immediately punished because the food of mom was perfect. And then they get there, one of the first mitzvahs which is keeping Shabbat. And they're told that they'll get a double portion. They got a double portion of man on Friday, but Shabbat it wasn't going to come. Some people who didn't believe that went out, so they violated Shabbat. The other thing is they were supposed to they were supposed to be learning Torah diligently. They had some laws, even though the Torah hadn't been given yet, and they were being very lax in that. I'll have more to say about that shortly. And the parsha ends with attack by Amalek, one of our sworn enemies. And Hashem says that at the end of the parsha, that his throne, his kisei, will not be complete until Amalek is wiped out, and we have Amalek from door to door every generation. Now, I want to concentrate on Amalek. Who is Amalek exactly? He was both a physical person and a spiritual concept. Looking at it from when and who was his descendant, Haman of the story of Purim, Megillah Esther, where he planned to annihilate all the Jewish people one day. Now, when was it first before Hashem's throne that Haman was going to wipe out the Jewish people? The Gemara explains, so the Amalek concept's been around for a long time. He saw that was going to happen, Hashem, 2,000 years before creation, a significant year, because that's when Hashem wrote the Torah, white fire on black fire. In any event, that is the first stage. That is the origin. Physically, who was Amalek? And before we get to that, it says in the battle of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, Where does it take place? It takes place in the valley of the Amaleki, of Amalek. Now, Amalek wasn't even born yet, as I'll explain in a minute. He didn't exist. So why is it saying the valley? As Rashi explains, that influence of his was present even before he was physically present. And it's talking about the times of Yeshua when they did do battle with Amalek. So in other words, it's foreshadowing that. Amalek physically was a product of Eliphaz and his concubine Timnah, and Eliphaz was the son of Esav. Now, what was the story of Timnah? Timnah was a princess, one of the nations. She wanted to convert. Abraham refused because I guess he doubted her sincerity. Same with Yitzchak. So she decided, I can't marry Abraham. I can't get into the tribe through Abraham and Yitzchak. I'm going to get through being the concubine of Esav's son. And the offspring produced from that was Amalek. And that is the origins. Amalek, by the way, also reflects conceptually the concept of doubt, because before the attack of Amalek, as we see in the song that the Jews sang at the Yam Suf in gratitude after the Yam Suf, drowning of the Egyptians, all the nations were terrified. Amalek attacked, and as Ramban explains, it was like, what did he do? He reduced the fear of the nations. He gives a comparison. Visualize a boiling hot pool or a boiling hot bathtub. Somebody jumps into it, they're going to get badly burned, but it reduces the temperature of the water. And this reduced the fear. And the nations throughout the history figured, listen, Amalek didn't use the right tactics. We use the right tactics, we can destroy the Jews. Now, they haven't succeeded with God's help, but that's Amalek skewed the whole course of history by doing that. Now, I would like to turn to the actual battle of with Amalek. But before I do, what triggered that? Why were the Jews suddenly attacked by Rephidim? What have they done wrong? And how was Amalek able to attack at all? Because there was the cloud of glory and a pillar of fire that protected them from all everything. And the answer to that is these people were ejected because they had gotten Saras, a disease for speaking against Shem and Moshe, and they were ejected and therefore vulnerable. Now, if we look at the Jews suffered two things. First, they did not have enough water. Where did that come from? And they explain, the Or HaChaim explains that Torah has two aspects. It's referred to as water, which is it's the source of all life. And what did they do? They were lax in it. They weren't studying the way they were supposed to. Shem gives them the great gift of his Torah. They ignore it. And for that reason, they suffered a drought and they had water shortages, which followed them through history, and the whole history to 40 years in the desert. And Torah is also compared to fire. It says in Yirmiyahu, my word is like fire. It means that we're supposed to be in the war against, war not in the sense of battling, killing each other, but debating the Torah, getting to the truth of the Torah. And they didn't do that. So what did they get? They got a real milchama on their hands. They got the milchama with Amalek. So that is the deeper cause behind it. Now I'd like to read the verses about Amalek. It's relatively short. And the whole battle takes place. Yeshua goes up, does battle. Moshe raises his hands. Every time they see Moshe raising his hands, they saw that everything came from Hashem. As soon as he lowered his hands, they looked upon it as a conventional battle, didn't look upon Hashem's intervention, and they started losing the battle. Finally, they defeated them, but unlike future enemies they've confronted, they did not destroy the Amalekites. They still existed. Now, the wording that they bring towards the end, Omer Hashem el Moshe, Kutzav Zot Zikaron B'Sefer B'Shim B'Azni B'Yeshua Mimacha Emcha It's Zaka Elik Matakas Shemayim. And Hashem spoke to Moshe, write this as remembrance in the book and recited in the ear of Yeshua, that I shall surely erase the memory of Amalek under the heavens. And Moshe then built an altar, which he called Hashem as my name. And the last pasuk says, V'yomer al ki yad al kis ya milchama l'Hashem ba'amalek midor l'dor. And Hashem and Moshe built the altar and called it Hashem as my miracle. And then it says, for the hand is on the throne of Hashem. Maintain a war against Amalek from generation to generation. Now, there's a number of questions on this verse. First of all, the word kisei is not spelled the way it normally is in Hebrew. It would be kaf samek aleph. The aleph is missing. That's one question. The other question is, and this is the Or HaChaim asks, there seems to be extra wording. What is the extra wording? The extra wording that is here is, you should erase his memory of from Amalek from under the heavens. Now, since this is going on earth and it's definitely under the heavens, why do we need that extra wording? Nothing extra in the Torah. And the Or HaChaim goes on to explain that we're talking by the extra wording, and that it has to go from door to door. It's talking about three phases. The first phase was the battle that Yeshua had at the time in this week's Parsha. It then goes on to explain the next part is door to door, is when they almost annihilated Amalek at the time of Shaul HaMelech, King David's predecessor. He was ordered to wipe out the Amalekites. He wiped out all but one of them, who was became the great-grandfather of Haman, of the Purim story, where Haman, as prime minister, planned to wipe out all the Jewish people. And what happened in the story of Purim, Megillas Esther, I'm going to get into that more detail as we get closer to Purim. Haman's plans were thwarted. Now, so what is the words under heaven telling us? It's telling us that at the time of Mashiach, there will be a total obliteration of the name, and not only the name, the power that he represents, the negative powers of impurity, he and Esav, and that will be that's referring to the Messianic times, Mashiach ben David. Now, so there's still a couple of questions I'd like to do, is which of the words Kisei, and why does it mention Hashem's hand is on the throne? We know Hashem's on the throne. Why are we suddenly mentioning his yad, his hand? And now the letter yad is Yud Daled, as Rav Shimshon Astropoli explains. That is dealing with the date on which Haman was killed, and the plot of his was thwarted, because in that day the Jews were given permission, had done battle with the Persians, who were anti-Semitic. And who were they all? They were all Amalekites. They were all from the same people. And therefore, That's what the Yud Dalet is doing. Now, what does the letters Kaf Samek indicate? Now, Rav Shimshon Mastropoli gives an incredible parush here that what is in fact going on is at the time of the Purim story, the Jews had committed a grievous sin by going to Achashverosh's party. They should have been destroyed, but Hashem made a miracle and delayed it. And the letters Tav Chet, when was it transferred? To letters Tav Chet, which was the year 1648. This was the time of the Kalmaniki uprising of the Ukrainians, where over the next couple of years, starting in 1648, which that was be the Hebrew year Tav Chet, they literally annihilated hundreds of thousands of Jews, decimated their presence in Eastern Europe, and there was a gezerah. Now, where does that come from? Where do those letters Tav and so what does Kisei mean? Kisei is talking about Kaf Sivan, the Hebrew month, because that was the time that the massacre of the Jews, where a lot of Jews died, Kiddush Hashem, started. In fact, one great Rav was killed then. So Rav Shimshon Astropoli proclaimed that an ongoing fast day in commemoration of that event. And so that's where you get the Reishi Tevil's. Now, what about the Tav and Chet? Where did they come from? Why that particular year, 1648? Because the Chet is from the name Hor. Hor was the person who tried to stop them from building a golden calf, and he was killed for his efforts by the Arab Rav. What is the Tav going for? That's taken from the name of Esther. And the massacre the Jewish people should have been annihilated, punished first for the thing of killing Od, and should have been annihilated at the time of Purim, which would have been the end of the Jewish people. So Hashem, in his infinite mercy, prevented that. So this massacres were transferred to that time because they had to be in accounting. However, and that's what occurred. Ironically, Rav Shimshon Astropoli died Kiddush Hashem later on in the same uprising. However, as Shem Tov says, one of the commentaries on the Ramban's deeper commentary on Chumash, 5 books of Moses, said that there will be this man of Mashiach, and that's talking again about the last period. And now that we've seen all the travails of history and we're going through the challenges then and now, hopefully we'll get soon to the point where Esav and Amalek will be destroyed, and we will be getting then to the ultimate redemption, because as he explains, if you take the letters Tav Chet, and you, as I explained, but it also says Medor Lador, from generation to generation. If you take the gematria of the Hebrew letters of from door to door, which we were suffering through, it has the same gematria, mathematical value of the Hebrew letters Mashiach ben David, when Amalek's name and Esav's, not only his name, but their influence, were removed. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.